Hello, I'm Dustin Johnson with the Eastern Oregon Ag Research Center. This week I'll talk about a study on western juniper woodlands in southeastern Oregon and southwestern Idaho. As part of this study, we first inventoried woodlands across the study area to determine general trends of juniper expansion since settlement of the region. We found that rapid juniper expansion began in the mid-1800s in southwestern Idaho and the late 1800s in southeastern Oregon. In Idaho, we found a scattering of older trees. In fact, about 60% of stands in Idaho supported at least one tree that established prior to settlement, whereas only 23% had pre-settlement trees present in Oregon. We speculate that a higher presence of pre-settlement trees in Idaho provided a seed source for an earlier initiation of juniper expansion. Because juniper started expanding sooner in Idaho, expansion is more advanced with large, contiguous, densely populated stands. Woodlands in southwestern Idaho may offer us a glimpse of what's on the horizon for southeastern Oregon. Today I'll talk about some general attributes of western juniper expansion. In 2001, we sampled 340 stands across southeastern Oregon and southwestern Idaho. About 5% of these stands established prior to settlement in the mid-1800s. The remaining 95% was comprised mainly of post-settlement trees, and about a third of these stands were still open, with few young trees and an intact sagebrush community. Another third had a mix of young and mature trees with a codominant, nearly intact understory. The remainder was characterized by a high dominance of mature trees and a substantial decline in the shrub and herb layer. Density of trees greater than 150 years of age averaged about 6 trees per acre, whereas current tree density in fully developed stands averaged about 245 trees per acre, representing about a 40-fold increase in tree density since the mid-1800s. In a recent study, we were interested in identifying the time required to reach two critical stages in the development of western juniper stands. The first being the minimum number of trees required to dominate a site once mature, and the second being the point in time in which trees begin competing with one another. We speculate that the time when trees begin competing with one another corresponds to canopy closure and a rapid decline in understory vegetation. We found that the rate of woodland establishment increased with elevation and northerly exposure. One can think of these factors as indicating higher soil moisture availability on the site. Stands on cool, moist sites achieved a minimum stocking of over 100 trees per acre in less than 25 years, whereas 40 to more than 50 years were required to achieve a minimum stocking of fewer than 40 trees per acre on warm, dry sites. We also found that drier sites support fewer total trees in a closed canopy state than cool, moist sites, less than 135 as opposed to greater than 365 trees per acre, respectively. However, canopy closure occurred within 80 to 120 years on cool, moist sites, compared to 120 to 170 years in warm, dry sites. In a recent study, we were interested in determining how much fuels change during juniper encroachment into shrub steppe communities. We found herbaceous and shrub biomass declined substantially during woodland encroachment. We estimate that herbaceous biomass declined 60%, while shrub biomass declines 95%. And as one might expect, tree biomass increases substantially. In fact, we estimate about a 54-fold increase. Shrub and herbaceous species average 96% of total live fuels biomass in shrub steppe-dominated communities, whereas this combination averaged less than 2% of live fuel biomass in juniper-dominated communities. This decline in fine and ladder fuels significantly changes the fire regime from a ground fire to infrequent but much more severe canopy fire. And barring some substantial environmental or management change, this decline in fine fuels and associated reduction in the frequency of fire will likely continue until juniper dominates most sites suitable to its survival. One of the problems with current juniper control is that it tends to be generically applied, even though juniper is able to dominate a broad array of environments over diverse landscapes. Across any given landscape dominated by juniper, stands are developing under a variety of environmental conditions. Recall earlier this week that on cool, moist sites, juniper stands reach a state of woodland closure much more quickly than on dry, warm sites. Also recall, woodland closure corresponds to a decline in understory fine and ladder fuels that significantly changes the fire regime from a ground fire to canopy fire. Under this scenario, prescribed fire is only feasible with mechanical treatment that it greatly increases the cost of management. Therefore, it seems reasonable that juniper management programs should plan for site differences in the frequency of treatments, and should also plan for control prior to woodland closure. I'm Dustin Johnson. Thanks for listening. Be sure to join Claire Paulson next week at the same time for more Eastern Oregon Ag Minutes.